question, I think we're back to you, Deb, beginning with you. How can we minimize the impact of the debt on future generations? The debt now equals more than 100% of the total GDP. How do you minimize the debt? Even if we don't go into debt any further, how do we minimize and relieve the impact of that $16 trillion debt on our kids and grandkids?
Increase.
Is it working? Yeah, there you go.
Increase the productivity of our economy through a reduction of horrible restrictions on labor, wages, prices, in other words, return to the free market. That's what we need to do. We need to get the federal government out of the economy. Once we do that, once we really set the scene for people to be creative, for people to reap what they sow, to ambitiously come up with new ideas, to optimistically create their new world instead of running in the quicksand that we've been running in all of our lives, that will allow greater productivity, greater wealth, and the opportunity to once and for all liquidate this horrible debt.
I certainly agree with much with what Doug said. We have got to grow our way out of this economy, the debt, and the way to do that is to allowing the economy to go, taking regulations out, allowing private enterprise to drive and grow. In addition to that, we need to cut regulations, as Doug was saying, and allow private enterprise to unleash its power to grow our economy. Thank you.
We've dug ourselves such a big hole, we're not going to be able to just grow out of it unless we radically cut spending simultaneously. We have to return to the constitutionally mandated functions of the federal government while simultaneously doing everything that we can do to grow our economy and grow revenues simultaneously. If we don't do that, we're not going to be able to grow out of this. We have to cut spending. Right now, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid is 50% of our budget. And the elderly, the retired, and the near to retire outnumber everybody else in this population. And they vote. 25% of our budget is military, 15% is everything else. We have to look at that everything else and decide how much of that does the federal government need to do, how much is it constitutionally mandated to do. If we do what they did in 1920 and radically cut spending 50% and lower tax rates 50%, we can be out of this and we can take care of our debt.
Wow, 1 minute. Let me give you two phrases, 3 points, and see if I can fit it in a minute. The two phrases are cut spending and deregulation. Okay, if we touch those things, we can start to address this very, very quickly. But I would say my 3 points are leverage our energy. The age of energy is upon us, and we can leverage that through royalties, through expansion, through market ownership and dominance to pay back and pay off our debt and get this economy growing much quicker in addition to growing jobs. The second point would be the framework. We have to articulate a message, send someone back that can articulate a message that the beef of the free market will be far more bountiful than any amount of pork that any congressman can or can't bring to his or her district. Finally, and this is why I wish I had 5 minutes, is that you have to lead with a vision. That's what this campaign and my campaign effort has been all about, leading with a vision. Our district can and should be the preeminent leader for job growth in this nation. I hope I get a chance to explain that to you. Thank you.
National defense is the primary responsibility of the federal government and its number one job. Can we find waste and abuse and fraud in the Defense Department and still maintain a strong enough military to protect us?
Absolutely. Any large organization, whether it's private enterprise or government, has tremendous waste and inefficiency in it. I've seen it extensively in the military. The Marine Corps has a great example of trying to build a new landing craft. Ended up costing $1 billion, and they ended up scrapping it as they just lost track of what the requirements were. We can and must, in fact, eliminate waste and fraud and inefficiency to maintain a strong defense. We know there's going to be limited resources. We have to spend them as effectively and as efficiently as possible. The bases and KITSAP are strategic to this country. They're strategic to this country over the next several generations. Defending them is not about pork. Defending them is about our strategic defense. Thank you.
My dad was a federal auditor, and he would search through programs for waste, fraud, and abuse. He went to a conference one time, and they asked all of these auditors, is there a single government program you're glad your tax dollars are going to? Not a single one raised their hand. That's including the Department of Defense. So yes, there is plenty we can cut in the Defense Department in terms of waste, fraud, and abuse. We need to give the DAO a little bit more power to do so. We also need to redefine the mission that we're asking our heroes in the military to accomplish. We can be just as strong in peace. We can be strong with local bases fully funded and fully prepared to go to war, so that when we do send our boys to war, they're not going to be shrapnel to death because they don't have the correct protection. So we can redefine and be strong here, not fighting and dissipating our energies around the world. China is smart. They are not dissipating their energies. They're building their military strength.
Very important question. I mean, there are two parts. It talked about the United States having to have a strong military, but also can we actually achieve some effectiveness within it. And just the other day I was driving home from an event up in northern Kitsap County, and my driver, who's served in both the Navy and the Army, was chatting with me about how a hammer that you can buy at Home Depot for $5 costs him, when you want to procure it on the ship, $147 for the same hammer. Certainly there are inefficiencies that we can start to work out, which is why I think you need to send someone with the right experience back to Congress that understands how lean processing or how Six Sigma, these types of business efficiencies could be applied to our military. But more important, we also have a great opportunity to leverage new technology. And if you send someone back that's worked in the technological arena, that can understand how these can benefit our military to drive down costs, but to make them more effective and efficient at the same time, we can still lead with strength and do it much more effectively than any of our competitors around the world. Thank you.
We have to quit fighting undeclared wars. They're wasteful and they're unconstitutional. We have to quit financing at the rate of hundreds of billions of dollars a year the security of Japan, Germany, and other great nations that can't afford it, and instead create a socialist utopia, I say that sarcastically, on our dollar. We have to allow private individuals in the contracting firms the ability to whistleblow and reap the benefit of that whistleblowing. Now, I've participated in some of those suits, but they're very difficult for whistleblowers to prove. We need to lighten up on the hurdle that they must get over to prove their allegations of fraud. We must indeed create more competitive bidding practices so that we aren't spending $150 for a hammer.
Mr. Young, in 1 minute. Oh, is Mr. Eichner? I apologize.
Lost track.
No, I'm sorry. No, it is you. You're right. I'm sorry. I was one step ahead of myself.